Hey everyone, welcome to Creating the Comic. This week features my interview with writer Brandon Starocci. He's the creator of the Avalon series. I've had a chance to read both the 3 issues that are out, as well as the 2 issues that are currently up on Kickstarter. It's a great interview. It's wide-ranging. We cover a lot of different topics, including crafting stories, crowdfunding. He shares a lot of great insight. And as I mentioned, I've read the books. They're really good. It's a fantastic series, especially if you're into kind of the post-apocalyptic zombie genre. It's really good and takes a different angle that I really appreciate, since we definitely get a lot of those types of stories. So if you have a chance, check the links. I've included it. It's currently available on Kickstarter. Again, the 4th and 5th issues. Fantastic series. I really enjoyed this interview. So without further ado, check out my interview with Brandon Starocci.
Hey everyone, so I'm here with Brandon Starocci. He's a writer and creator of the Avalon series. Brandon, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So with any interview, anytime I'm talking to a new creator, I always kind of like to get an idea of how that person found their way into what they are doing, right? So if it's comics, I'd love to know, what's your background in comics? Is it something that you started out with as a kid? Did you find it as an adult? Just give me a little bit just on your own background in comic books.
Yeah, so the background with comic books, it isn't an extensive one. I've talked to people in the past that literally said they came out of the womb and they're already reading comics. But for me, it was bigger, getting the comics after watching the show of The Walking Dead, and about 2-3 seasons into it, when it first came out, is when I realized it was actually a comic. So I was like, oh, that's cool. So I ended up buying all those comics and reading all those, and that kind of was the gateway for my comic kind of adventure, I guess. For that, I would read the traditional Batmans and all that stuff too, and just like kind of horror, kind of lower kind of end comic books like The Crazies or 30 Days of Night and stuff like that. But I'll read like the bigger superheroes as well, but it's not an extensive story. I read comics here now, because I'm obviously making comics now, but I've just been interested in the whole entertainment aspect of everything my whole life. My dad was a big movie watcher, and obviously I grew up with that, and I was a big movie guy, or I was, before this process, because now I just dive in deep with the whole creating process in general.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you bring up. I think it gets a little intimidating sometimes when you meet those people that know every issue of every comic that's ever been made. And I think there are a lot of us that, like, I'm kind of similar to you, where I grew up with comics and reading them as a kid, and then it kind of disappeared for a while, and then I refound it as an adult.
Yeah.
But I collect comics, I read, but I'm not somebody who, every Friday I'm going to the shop and getting every book. But I found it such a great way to tell stories that there's a passion, that's been developed there as well. So I kind of definitely identify with that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And like you said though too, and like having those people that know it, like in the beginning of all of it too, I almost was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was like, I don't know enough. I don't even know what I call myself in this kind of situation. But it's cool to hear it that coming from you as well, that you were in it and then you were out for a while and then you came back into it as well. It's reassuring, I guess, for somebody like me.
Exactly. And I think everybody's like that. I think, there's so many different, you get so many different people that have their own entryway into it.
Sure.
And I think it's just also that it's grown so much in the last decade as a medium that's been taken somewhat seriously. I think helps a lot.
Yeah.
And just gives us, an avenue to tell stories. So prior to your comic, then, did you have any background in creative writing or any interest in creative writing, or is that just something that, like, you had the story and you needed to tell it?
Yeah, it's more the second option. I have no real background in it. It's kind of a learn as you go kind of thing. The idea was there way back when I was in high school. I don't even know what that is now, 9 years ago at this point, but didn't know what to do with it. So I kind of put it away, and then I met Alan, which is the writer as well in this comic as well. So we kind of collaborated and all that stuff, and he liked the idea that I had, the original idea, and we kind of worked on it together and kind of made it blossom. And so no real background, it's just, like I said, kind of learn as you go. Alan had some sort of foot in the entertainment industry. He had a whole music thing going on in the past as all that, so that he kind of understood some aspects of it, but we were kind of learning together. But knowing that as well, it was easy for us to kind of adapt to it slowly and kind of understand that this stuff doesn't come easy and kind of work towards it, and understanding it would be a couple drafts and all that stuff as well, and not really being discouraged with all the stuff that comes with the creating and the writing process.
Yeah, it's funny. You're mirroring me too, because I have a writing partner, not on my comic books, but I'm working on a couple of audio dramas, and my writing partner is a good friend who's also comes to it from music. So neither of us like necessarily like from a deep creative writing background, but
it still works in a certain way. Like he's like, coming from him and his experience and hearing it from him, he had his foot in the industry in itself, and understanding at least, with the music, it's not going to be easy. It's something that you got to learn. It's something that you got to keep pushing for, and know that there's going to be drafts and drafts and drafts and drafts until you get to the final product.
Well, it's very similar to songwriting. Like a songwriters are telling a story, whether they're telling it through their lyrics, which in this case, my friend is a very good lyricist, or if they're telling it through music, you're still telling a story. You're still drawing emotions out of people. So I think there are very obvious and clear parallels, between the two.
Yeah, you said it better than I could.
So tell me about, so let's talk about Avalon. I had a chance to read the first few issues, and I'm not blowing smoke. I really thought it was fantastic. I think
thank you.
You do a really good job. When you're dealing with like the horror and zombie genre, I think tension is the key to telling stories. And I do think you do a really great job of managing tension. And I want to get into a little bit more, as far as how you are able to work that into your stories. But I guess tell listeners a little bit about the story and how you came about that idea and moving forward with it.
Yeah. So about the story, basically, it's just you follow the cast world that is created right from issue 1, and you follow their journey and trying to find some everlasting kind of safety and all that stuff. And the family that you meet, immediately you could tell that there's drama before the apocalypse even kind of technically starts. And one of the oldest brother, Andy, is about 30-40 minutes away in the bigger city as a police officer, and the other 3/4 of the family is in a small little town dealing with their own issues, and they have a lot of problems that lead up to issue 1 that we will learn in the next few issues coming up as well. And obviously in issue 1 you get hit with this apocalypse, this whole zombie-like kind of thing coming out, and really experimenting with that. And there's different elements that we wanted to touch, because the zombie genre has been done over and over again, so we had to think of some kind of new flavor to do it, because I'm a big fan myself of the genre. But it's really trying to ground this story in as much reality as possible, and that could be hard sometimes, given the fictional nature of this kind of storyline and genre. And but it also could be easy in the same sense, where breaking it down, breaking the characters down, making the world feel real, making the infection feel real. And that was one of the big things that before we even started the whole writing thing and the character development was, what is this? What are we going to make? What's going to be different? What's going to be traditional? What's going to be all those things? We figured all those things out, and then once we hit it, we knew that's what it was. And building the characters and the world around the infection that we found and all that stuff too. And is a kind of a mirror-ish thing of my life. I have 2 brothers myself. We've all dealt with, family issues. We've all dealt with anxieties and depressions and all that stuff as well. And, I know people that have dealt with it, and, we've, in our own kind of ways, especially with the pandemic that we just came through, we all kind of dealt with some sort of mental health kind of aspect of something. But it's applying that, making it feel real, and making everybody read it and go, okay, I can relate to that. I can see why that happened and all that stuff going forward.
Yeah. Well, no, as an aside, did dealing, so, obviously you had this idea before pre-COVID and pre-pandemic. Did the pandemic have an impact on your own storytelling or storylines, or how you wanted to tell the story?
I think it, not so much the story aspect itself. I think it makes it easier for me to sell the story, because now people can go, oh, okay, I see what he's saying now, because we dealt with something kind of like this, where, the world, one night you go to bed and the next night you're like, okay, this stuff's real. This stuff's happening. Now we have to start figuring this stuff out, and the slow progression of trying to figure out what's going on in the next second ahead of you. And then what do we have to stock up on? What are we going to work tomorrow? These are real thoughts that people had. Is everybody doing okay? Is my family doing okay? Like, do I have to go to work tomorrow? Am I waiting for a text to say work's off today? Stuff like that. Like, so we've all had to deal with that one way or another. And it's an easy, because it kind of goes down that pandemic thing, obviously on a higher level, because now you got people like eating each other. But you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's easier to sell it, but it definitely makes it easier to write it as well, because a lot of this stuff was real. A lot of this stuff you could take from the source of life right now that we all had to deal with, and kind of implement it in our story.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you touched on this, that, in the last 10, 15 years, I think we've seen a lot of the post-apocalyptic drama. We've seen a lot of zombie stories, pandemics. We've dealt with the pandemic. What did you do to really try to set your story apart from other things that we've seen?
Trying to ground it in the reality, as I mentioned, and really shining light on the mental health aspect of things and the real life physical issues that people deal with on a day-to-day basis. People have broken limbs, people deal with, people have to take medications for their physical problems and all that stuff, like asthma, diabetes, cancers, treatments and all that stuff too. So it's actually really shining the light on that, rather than bringing up a character and go, oh, this person has asthma, and okay, that's cool, and then they kind of slowly put them in, hide them, and you never see them again or hear the problem again. It's just, those things are going to be big story elements for us. So those aren't going to be just discussed for a moment and then buried, and that's what I found, being, a fan of the genre, that I found that happens more often than not. And it's kind of frustrating because, coming from me, one of the earliest questions I asked myself was, how would I do in a situation like this? How would I survive the apocalypse? And that was the first question that really made this kind of project come to life. And now everybody else can ask that as well. And one of the things that, we added a new writer, Callie Oberlander, to the project for the season 2 kind of thing. And she helped out with the back half of the first season. But she brings that as well. She brings that real life kind of issues, and making it all feel real, and having everybody's able to relate to somebody or something going on in this story. Nobody's going to feel left out.
How do you find the process of collaborating with writers? Is it a bit of is there tension at all, or do you flow really well or work well as a kind of a writing team?
For me, it's easier for me because it's nice to have that kind of help and that kind of guidance. With Alan, I've had it a lot more in the first kind of season and all that stuff as well, and having him, we were kind of going through it together, but he had that upper hand because he knew some sort of the creating process of, at least in the music and all that stuff too. So I was able to kind of like steer me in a direction that sounded good and all that stuff, because I knew what I wanted, but it was all about making it flow, make it all come to life in the proper way and all that stuff. So that's where we bounce our ideas, and I like to be a sponge myself and soak in all the information I can get. And with Callie, she has many projects that she's worked on, films, podcasts, and acting and writing and all that good stuff. And she has her own podcast that she does too. I'll shout it out real quick, Tia and Rio Show. But she does it very good. She has experience in it, and having her alongside of it as well, it's nice for me to kind of learn from her and take this project and move forward with it, because we have a lot of the same visions, and what her storytelling is and mine is right now, that's where it's going in season 2. And it's in my head, it's only going to help me and the story grow.
Yeah. So I guess, and this maybe take a step back of a question. When you hadn't had this idea, was it always in your mind going to be a comic, or did you ever think, maybe I'll do a prose novel, maybe I'll write a screenplay? Like, I guess, was it always a comic? And if it wasn't, what made you decide to go the route of making it a comic?
So it wasn't supposed to be a comic. The first time when I had the idea, I wanted it to be a screenplay. I wanted it to be a movie, at first, and all that stuff, or a small series, whatever it was. And but the problem was, nothing, no family members, nothing. So that's when I originally kind of just buried it for a little bit, and then kind of working up for it. And then when Alan and I kind of were figuring out what we wanted, it was going to be a novel for a little bit there. But then I'm sitting there thinking, I don't like reading long books like that. And I had one of the Walking Dead comic books on my desk as well. And then I shot him a text. I said, why don't we just make a comic book? Mm-hmm. And then he's like, I'm listening and all that stuff. And I kind of was like, we could do this, and that, and make it look more movie-like, because the original idea was supposed to be a movie. And with comics, you can kind of do that on a way, way, way cheaper scale than actually having a film crew and all that stuff as well. And we're able to do that now because of the artist we have as well. He makes the panels look like a camera angle or camera flow and going back and forth on the page there. And that was basically why it's a comic now.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Now, did you, if you could go back and tell you, because I think everybody that, works on the first comic kind of has this, not realizing how hard it actually is. Were you ready for how difficult the process would be? Or, did you know, like initially, like if you go back and talk to yourself, would you say, yeah, this is gonna be a lot harder than you expected? Or was it pretty much what you expected, the process of actually creating that first book?
So I won't say I thought it was going to be easy, but I also, it's not like the writing and all that stuff is like hard per se. It's all the stuff that comes with it. Yeah. You got to sell it. you gotta be able to make money to make the physical issue and then kind of find a fan base. You have to be able to write it and create a big world and in a condensed 24-page setting. It's not like a big hour and a half, 2 hour movie that you can kind of like show everything off and get those action scenes, all that good stuff. But these are condensed, and we're doing the 24 pages. I know other people do more pages, but I found that to be the common kind of thing. So I kind of shaped it around that. The case, as soon as we got all that done, it became easier writing the comic, but now it's just like, again, not easy, but it's harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Originally.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of, if you're a good storyteller, you're going to be able to, the story comes easy, but I think it's a lot of the scripting it and getting it to the artist and the dynamic with the artist, and then getting it getting the crowdfunding. It's just a lot of work that's beyond just like creating a story. So
right, and I think one thing you brought up too that I would like to touch on too is the dynamic that you have with the artist, and fortunately for us that we have Demetrius, and he's very easy to work with. He's very very good work ethic. He does a very good job, and he's always getting stuff done on a timely fashion and all that stuff. He loves the project that of Avalon too, and which is great, for me to hear, and to have an artist that actually wants to be here. He loves the story and loves the progression of the things. He always, kind of makes comments of things that are happening in the story and how he wants to. When I send him the script, he has the overall script, and then he's breaking it down. He's like, this would work here, here, and here.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point with our relationship that I trust him on each page, and I'm like, just shoot for it. Let me see what you got, and it looks good. Then we just roll with it. So having that dynamic with the artist is definitely a plus for me.
That's huge. Thing. Yeah, actually, I got lucky, like with my first book, is that I got an artist that's just like that, and you have that dynamic, and it's amazing because then and they're so much into the story that you trust that, hey, I trusted what you're gonna do, send it over, and it's generally gonna be better than what I thought of, because I can come up with the story, but I'm not the visual person, I'm not drawing it, and so the fact that they're able to do that, and then it's nice that if they're into it, because then they're gonna come, they might have ideas of their own, and so it's nice to have somebody that is obviously they're doing it for money, but they're not just doing for the paycheck. They actually,
which is awesome. You said a lot of good points there as well, and those are all things that I feel and I've said in the past, to the team and to other people as well. Like those are big things to have, big pluses to have when you're making a comic book, and it alleviates some of the stress of dealing with all the other things like the marketing to selling and all and the creating process alone. When, like you said, I like to just let the artist be the artist. Now, in the beginning I was kind of strict on it because I didn't know him, he didn't know me. It was, at that point it was like a job, but now we've developed a relationship over time, and now I trust him and I trust what he can do with the panels and the pages and what he can show the readers and myself.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to talk a little about your writing process. Like I like talking to writers and just getting kind of picking their brains. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about how you craft a story. So I always kind of go back to, there's that, George R. R. Martin kind of talks about how there's an architect and the gardener, like the architect kind of plots and plans everything out, beginning to end and writes. And then you have the gardener who just kind of writes, just kind of plants a seed and lets it go.
Yeah.
Where would you say you are? And granted, like comics, I feel like you kind of have to be more of an architect, but where do you feel you are, on that scale?
And the thing is I think I'm in the middle there, and because the thing is I know the big points I want to hit in this story. I know how, I have a general understanding of how I'm going to end it. Now, what leads up to that moment, I still have to figure out. I have the big highlights of the story per se, but I have to figure out, like, and what I've noticed from the first draft of issue 1, when Alan and I were originally gonna, get it out there with the different artists, and then we realized that this script is not done. You know what I mean? So we're like, hang on a second, we gotta pull it back. And then when we were talking about, we're discussing, we had meetings and trying to figure this out. We stretched the original issue 1 to about 3-4 issues that you guys are reading now. That's out right now, which is a cool kind of learning curve for myself and Alan as well. Is you could stretch a lot of this stuff out in the comic world and still make it interesting and fun, and have that, like you were mentioning earlier too, the tension and all that, and keeping all those moments and making them big moments and all that stuff. But like, to answer again to your question, I think I'm in the middle there because I'm still learning as we go along. I have general ideas of what I want with each season moving forward, but I just, from that learning curve that I have from issue 1, I think it's going to be a whole new process and understanding all that stuff. And I think I'll end up turning into that architect that you're talking about, especially having Callie a part of the team.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Now, so if I'm right, then where issue 3 ends is where issue 1 was supposed to end.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that it took, I think it took balls to not do that, and I think it was the right choice, because it does help with the tension, right? Like if all that happened in 22 pages, it was a lot.
Yeah.
But I see, it makes a lot of sense to me that you make that you hold back.
Yeah.
Because I think and that pays off better too. Because I thought that's like, the biggest moment. Obviously, it's the end of the issue 3, and it is the big moment. I think that you're all also kind of there's a tension of anticipating it.
Yeah.
And so it does. I think it works that you held off that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I'm glad we did as well, because there's so much more development. There's so much more we learn from, and how one of the characters obviously is bit early on, and then you kind of see that, firsthand what happens to you when you get bit.
Yeah.
And kind of shining the light on that through the 3-issue span as well, which is a cool thing that we ended up coming up with later on, after that first horrible draft. So but having that now, and having that be the case now, that everybody can kind of see it and see the development of the infection, the development of the characters, and the stresses of the characters that they have to deal with, and actually letting it kind of burn in a slower rate than just bang, 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 bang. Now we're on to the next issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. So now, as you prepare to write an issue, what's the process like for you? Like, how do do you guys collaborate? Do you have like a kind of writer's room? What's that process for you as far as like just getting an issue together?
Sure. So right now it's different than what we did with the first season. Right now with season 2, basically, I have the idea of the mood I want for the season. That's the first thing I want to figure out. It's kind of like the title of the season per se. Like the first season in my head is just called "Changes Are Coming." It's just an obvious title. It's a bland title. It's just a very easy thing. But we have a mood for season 2, and now that the mood's set, I set the moods for each issue for the 6 issues in the season that we have. And then after that, I bullet point each point that's going to happen in the issues, and so on. And then at that point we go over those, and then we start writing panel layouts and dialogue and all that stuff as well. So it's just probably like a 3-4 step process now.
How much time does it take for you to get an issue together?
I wouldn't say long, especially with this process that we're doing now. It's like, because we're getting rid of all the meat part, it's just kind of interweaving it with each other now, and I feel like that's just going to be the easier part, because that stuff to me and to Callie as well, it just kind of flows. Like when we get to the dialogue and the panels, it just we think of it in a movie setting and all that stuff. I don't know how other people do it as well. It's just, I can only speak for myself, but it just seems easier with that whole process, and it just smoothly kind of goes from 1 to 24. And which is good, but
now, will you plan out, like, in part of the process, are you planning out page 1, like page 1 has this, page 2 has, all the way to 24? Or do you, at that point, once you have your outline and your bullet points, are you just kind of writing page to page?
Yeah, just like you said there in the last part, is we have the bullet points for the issue, and then we have like the meat there, and then we're just going to write from page 1 to 24. And then obviously we all understand that there's a lot more drafts than you don't write something. You're like, okay, this is it. You have it, and then you have to go back and readjust it and all that stuff as well. But that's been the process that seems to be the fastest and works for us the most. And actually, I'm glad we developed into that point, because before it was just kind of like, I have the idea, now let's just make it all flow. Because like I said earlier, that original issue 1 script was it. And we were able to expand that and make it 3 issues, almost 4 issues, so that was a good thing for us to kind of stretch that all out and let people kind of gather all the stuff that was happening.
Now, beyond the length of that, actually going back to that, the kind of bad initial draft, what else was bad about it? Because I think we've all been there. Like, I think if I look at the first couple drafts of scripts I've written, they've been pretty terrible. Both kind of technical errors for comics and just storytelling errors. But what would you say were the things that you were like, ooh, yeah, these aren't good, and I'm not going to make these mistakes again?
Yeah, the big one was it's just so much happening, and a small kind of comic book. It's so much too fast. There's no breathing. There's no breath that you can like take as the reader, or even the characters, for instance. It's like too much. And then I noticed that too. With that being said, I noticed that the dialogue was very stiff, and then that was like one of the things. Like, okay, hey, why it just feels too stiff, and then when we were thinking about it, then the dialogue just felt stiff, which led to us being like, there's too much happening. That's why. It just bang, 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 bang. It's just robotic. And then after knowing that going forward, it's you know, having that in our mind constantly when we're writing issues to come, it makes that process easier, and that's always going to be in the back of our head that issue one was going to be a disaster. You know,
Yeah.
you know, good thing we we fixed it and we moved on from it and we learned from it as well before we even set it out there. But it's good that we had that, and I constantly think about it. You know, they constantly think about it as well, that could have been bad, but you know, we ended up working our way out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I think like that, you just need that breathing room at times. You know, there's
Yeah,
the moments where it just needs to breathe and be its own thing
yeah,
and not just
right.
hammer you with story. So now what do you think, what are some of the challenges writing for comics as opposed to write, you know, okay, so you've worked on, you know, at some point this was going to be a screenplay, at some point this was going to be a prose novel. What makes comics different and more challenging? Like, what would you say to somebody who's getting into comics, that, you know, be your warning of here's how it's a little bit different from other storytelling styles?
Yeah, I think you know, because I've worked on feature films and short films with Kelly, and you know, feature films with other people as well, and you know, working on those things. Obviously I haven't filmed anything yet, or but the difference that I find, I mean, it can go hand in hand, but you know, because the way I write the script for Avalon is very, you got to like be very, almost very specific. At least I am. I don't know how other people are, but I'm very specific with the panels. Each one that I do, especially when I'm really strict on it, when something important is coming up, I'm very strict with the panels and like in the script and the sentences that what's going on. But you have to like really specify the panels. But I feel like that's slowly going to fade away since the relationship between Demetrius and I have kind of grown and expanded.
Mhm.
We kind of know each other at this point. But as of right now, that's what I found to be like different and a little more, not harder, but it's just different. You know, it's
Yeah.
different, and you got to be more specific, I feel like, in the comics, and actually make it, because the page needs to look nice too. You need
Yeah.
to have proper things in that page, just like I guess like
Yeah.
in a movie where like there's a certain scene, it needs to fit. You can't just have random madness. You know, it needs to
Yeah.
kind of flow properly and move. You know, you know, left to right and all that. So it's just like being very specific. I feel like is different.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And that's good. That's something I wish I had. Like, I don't, as much as I love comics, and to an extent, I have a good, I think I have good ideas,
Yeah.
but the panel, like, you know, it's kind of, I'm always appreciative of an artist who can take the panel descriptions
Yeah.
and then create a panel layout that looks nice. You know,
Yeah.
take the idea, and then when the artist can say, "Hey, I think this will look good," I'm always happy because it's like they've got that visual mind that I don't have, like that. You know, to really give that, because that's
Sure.
always been the bigger challenge for me with writing the page. Is like, okay, I know roughly how many panels should be on this page to tell this story, but like the layout is always, you know, the thing that like a good artist can really, you know, take up
Right. And
notches.
yeah, and that's the fortunate thing for us as well, where like I said, I have a general understanding of when I'm writing it, like what the page will look like, but there's no way I'd be able to make it appease the eye like Demetrius does,
Yeah.
or even think of it like that before he even gets to it. So, you know, knowing that now and having him being able to do that more and more, it makes my job and my life a little
Yeah.
bit easier as I'm writing the script and kind of moving it forward. I'll have, like I said, general panels and all that stuff too. Are there. I don't care, you know, because 90% of the time he's giving me a good page.
Yeah. And now, speaking of that story, so you do an interesting thing where it's mostly black and white, but with a little
Yeah.
with thread, right? And
Yeah.
so, what was the reason for that? Was it a story reason? Was it you know, it's cheaper to do that? Like, what was the reason for you to tell your story? Because it works, it pops, like the red
Yeah.
really pops and makes sense. But I'm interested to know, like, yeah, what made you make that choice?
So yeah, it's actually kind of all those things. You know, the original thing is like when Alan and I were first sitting there, we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? You know, because when we were messaging artists to kind of get quotes for, you know, pages in general, we realized that very, very expensive, some of them. And then we're like, okay, why don't we do the black and white? But then I obviously reading The Walking Dead as well, I wasn't too much of a fan where you can tell, but it's kind of annoying to like actually use your brain when you're trying to like be lost in the world, that like what's blood and what's not.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, okay, why don't we just do black, white, and blood? You know that it'll pop and all that stuff too. And he's like, yeah, we'll do that. And then I don't even remember how the original idea came up, but I remember we both liked the idea that the last page you
Mhm.
turn it and then boom, there's the color.
Yeah.
You know, and then we both like that idea, and then we're like, okay, that's gonna be the you know, kind of the image of Avalon. And you know, the ideas are always great, and I've said this in the past as well, but to have Demetrius be able to do it and make it shine too makes that idea seem a lot better. You know, the idea is one thing, but to have him blow it out of the water, it's awesome for us. You know, it's awesome for Avalon too, because it looks like now Avalon has its kind of thing that people will like see it and go, okay, that's Avalon, because he has his unique style. The gray tones are great. The blood pops on every page when he
Yeah.
puts it on there. It almost seems like wet and like coming off the page. And he just blows that idea out of the water.
So when it comes to story, for you, what makes a good story? Like, and this could be your stories, it could be just when you're looking or reading something. Like, what's important to you? What are the important things for you as far as the story is concerned?
The first thing I would say would be character development. And that kind of could be like a cop out, but
Mhm.
I want to be able to feel what the character's feeling or the main protagonist is feeling, and understand what they're going through as well. And that's and having it feel real as well. And that's what we try to do with Avalon, is really try to make it feel real, and really shine light on the character development. And again, that's what's going to help with us adding Callie to the mix as well, because she's a big person on character development as well, and really breaking the characters down and putting them in these hard situations as well. And that's kind of what I want to do as well. And I need to, and that we are doing, but it's only going to get better with her as well, and having more minds at the helm here. But my biggest thing would be just character development and story flow as well. I need to be all over the place like the original issue one was. Then it's just, you just throw it away.
How long do you feel this series is going to be? How many books do you think, or is it just indefinite at this point?
Yeah, right now it's just ongoing. It's going
Yeah.
to go until basically we run out of ideas and we're
Yeah.
like done. Because like I said, I have a general way I want to end this thing, and if it's going to be one of those things where if we feel like, okay, it's coming, there's not much we can give to it, then we're going to work towards that. It's kind of one of those things. So we have that plan where it's like when we're like done given what we got, or the characters or whatever it is, and all blah blah blah, that will be into the works. But right now it's just ongoing until then. We have a lot of things we want to hit and make sure people see, and these characters go through and build this world up as well, and it's going to be a long time.
Awesome. So tell us about your Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah. This Kickstarter is going to be issues 4 and 5. We're doing both of them, just because our main goal for this year was to get 4 issues out every quarter of the year. And really, with issues 4 and 5, I think it's best to kind of hit them out back and back, because back to back, because it really picks up right where issues 2 and 3 leave off, and it's like a bang bang, and you get those answers for both of those issues that we left off. And it sucks even for somebody like me, and whoever's reading us now, is it sucks because now you got to wait a while. And
Yeah.
with this, you don't have to wait so long. Now we're really trying to really force this out and get this out. It Script is done. Demetrius is almost done with issue 4 here. He's going to be done with issue 5 here as well. It's all going to be done in a timely fashion. Obviously, I checked with him before I decided to do the 2 issues. Like, can you do this? Is this good? Is this going to get done? And he's getting it done and all that stuff. He's banging out pages left and right, which is good for us and good for everybody who's looking at our project and making sure it's going to happen. It is, but a lot of cool stuff as well. We have a lot of unique kind of things. Cheaper rewards. So for new seeing it for the first time, I could see it and go, okay, this is doable. I can see what this is. There's a lot of stuff to look at with the art. Obviously we explain our storytelling elements and the realism and all that stuff we want to bring as well. So for somebody, if that intrigues anybody, we want to keep the PDF, the bundle things and all that stuff kind of cheaper for people to kind of try us out.
Yeah.
And one thing too that we're doing new is Demetrius is from Greece. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but so he does the artwork obviously all the way over there. I asked him if he could do original pencils of duo characters and send those over to me. He did. I have them in 11x17 prints of duo original pencils by Demetrius. Grab one of them here to show it. Don't want to drop them, but
oh cool, nice.
So yeah,
awesome. So he shipped those over to you.
Yeah, so I have them and all that stuff too. They're cool posters. Like I said, original pencils. There's only one of one, so and it comes with like the goodie bag and all that. And one of our big kind of pledge is going to be the goodie bag that comes with all the PDFs and that are out, variant covers, the standard covers and all that good stuff. And then the big reward is going to be somebody who wants to pledge for it will get a custom action photo made by Demetrius with the grayscale, the blood, and it's going to be like an action pose and all the good stuff. So you could feel as if you're in that world, by Demetrius kind of making that come to life for him.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So now tell me, this being now your fourth, Kickstarter campaign, what have you learned? Like, what are the challenges? Some things that have gone maybe well, gone not so well this time around. Like, tell me about that, because it's such a process that I am not looking forward to getting started at the end of the year.
Yeah. So basically, what I've learned so far is every Kickstarter is new, different. You learn from the last one, obviously, but then there's always something different about you editing your upcoming Kickstarter, whatever you're doing. And the process also is like, okay, now how am I going to market this? Like, what you want to get your standard pledges in there and all that good stuff, and then you want to get your unique kind of pledges in there for people who are like, okay, let's do this. And then you got to figure out how you're going to tell the story. Since we're on number 4, we're obviously doing issues 1 through 5 for catch-up people as well. So how do you want to lay out the Kickstarter? So it was kind of going back and forth on how we wanted to do that and all that good stuff, but we ended up, really showing off what we're doing now, and then allowing for people to breeze by and kind of see the past issues as well, and kind of giving brief kind of synopsis of what it's about, kind of explaining the artwork, explaining what Demetrius can do and what he does well and all that stuff as well, and really showing that stuff off. But it's just, you learn something new. It's always different. You never do one, you're like, okay, I got this. You know what I mean? This is good.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
never works that way.
Seems like it's constantly changing. So last question. So we have over the time I've been interviewing different creators, I find everybody's got their books that's like, this is the book that everyone needs in their library. So if you could give me 2 comics or graphic novels that we should add to our what's going to be called the Portable Whole Publishing Library, what 2 books would you say we should add to the library?
The comic book I would say would be The Walking Dead.
Okay.
And right now I'm reading Night of the Living Dead comic and The Crazies, which I didn't know was a comic. And
okay.
I'm actually enjoying both of those. I never read the Night of the Living Dead kind of comic book. I'm enjoying that actually a lot. I didn't realize it was going to be that good. But so I would say those 2, and obviously I would end it off with number 4, Avalon.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you, and we definitely hope, I'm looking forward to issues 4 and 5. Like I said, not just saying it, like the books are really good. So anybody that's listening, definitely jump on this campaign, because it's a really great story.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show. It was a fun time.
Thanks.